I think everybody here was very aware and very sorry to see, and very sad to see, the terrible earthquake that struck Nepal on April 25th, with 8,700 people killed, 16,000 injured, 500,000 homes destroyed, 12,000 schools destroyed. And it's only getting worse in some ways in Nepal to the extent that the monsoon is now arriving. Mr. Binod Chaudhary is a leading philanthropist and industrialist in Nepal. He and his 3 sons have been trying very hard to try to put the country back together in these very trying circumstances. And he's here to tell us a little bit today about those issues. Thank you.
Dear Tara Joseph, Keith Bradshaw, Mahesh Dal, Honorary Consul General of Nepal, friends, both from Nepal. I see a big contingent of non-Nepalese, non-resident Nepalese out here who are actively pursuing many entrepreneurial initiatives. And those of you who are here to associate yourself with a cause which I believe is very dear to your heart. I'm overwhelmed, first of all, with the initiative taken by our friends John Dawson and Diana. Where are you? I mean, they are right there, for taking all the initiatives, time, to help plan, a number of events which I'll be speaking to. This is the first time that I'm here for a different cause. I used to come here since 1973 on business. This time, I've been invited to meet with all of you and a few other event partners. The cause is very dear to our heart. As you all know, the story that has come out since April 25th, when Nepal was stuck with one of the biggest, in fact, the 3rd largest earthquake in the history of the world. And what followed thereafter were many of them, at least 2 big ones in May and June, has left, as Keith mentioned, 500,000 homes destroyed, thereby displacing 3 million people. More than 12,000 classrooms out of circulation. You can imagine the size of the children who have been deprived of education. More than 6 million people who needed immediate help in terms of food, shelter, water, medical aid, etc. I mean, despite having seen a tremendous solidarity that was demonstrated by our neighboring countries, countries like Hong Kong and places like almost all over the world, it took us a while to put our act together. The first task was, of course, the rescue operation. These are 17 districts out of 75, except for Kathmandu Valley. Majority of them are in difficult terrain, geographically, not easy to access. We tried to reach out with the help of the international community to all of them, but quite a few were left out. The next and the most important task that we have in hand is how do we rebuild Nepal, rising up from the rubble. I like to take the opportunity to take the help of my son who flew in this morning from Kathmandu, Nirvana, to help me with his technological gadgets to make a short visual presentation and a few slides. And with your permission, I'd like to go back to my seat and talk from there. Thank you again.
Nepal has been hit with its worst earthquake in decades.
After a quake toppled temples that stood for centuries.
Thousands homeless, and many more still unaccounted for tonight after the worst disaster Nepal has seen in nearly a century.
But it is now a scene of almost indescribable horror.
In the midst of chaos, let's find rays of hope. In the piles of rubbles and destruction, let's start a wave of construction. Even though our society is surrounded by sadness, wounds, and tears, let us spread love and support. Though separated by the wrath of this disaster, let us join hands for unity, a unity in diversity. The world might see a nation affected by unforeseen disaster, but let us all see a birth of a better and stronger Nepal. Yes, there is darkness all around, but let us find a light at the end of the tunnel. The power is in our hands. Let us build our nation. In this mission, we are together with you. We are Nepali. We are Chaudhary Foundation.
Yep. Thank you, Nirvana. You know, as I mentioned, the scale is humongous of the damage that has been done, and we realize post the, when I say we, I speak for many other organizations like ourselves as well as friends from all over the world. You know, our political parties, government, the NGOs, NGOs. After the immediate rescue operation was over, the next biggest priority was to build homes. That's what at least we concluded, that we will dedicate our efforts to find a solution to a home which may not be a permanent home, but at least something which you can use for 3-4 years. A transitional home, a shelter. And to put the schools back into the operation. Can you show the... We joined forces with, because as I said, we took on ourselves the task of building 10,000 homes and 100 schools, but what we need is 500,000 homes. And monsoon, which is going to start anytime next month, is going to pose another bigger crisis, because these are going to be the monsoon is going to make accessibility to many of the districts where the major damage has taken place, more difficult to access. The people who went out of their construction sites, because there was a state of psychological terror in their minds, and people just wanted to get out. I mean, you will still find that there are many of us who still prefer to go out in the evenings and sleep in an open field as against the homes. Apart from the 3 major earthquakes that I mentioned, we've seen more than 300 tremors. Okay, not of significant scale, but still it's enough to, raise an alarm in the minds of the people. So we've teamed up with an institution called Seeds in India, which is a not-for-profit organization who's worked in Jammu and Kashmir and in Uttaranchal and in Gujarat, where India has seen major crisis of this nature, as well as Pricewater India Foundation, to come together to create a platform which is capable of ramping up to meet the need of the hour. We received huge requests or proposals from our friends all over, and then they wanted to work with us. We worked with the government. We started coordinating our efforts with the local bodies as well as the government at the center to try and see that how we can support the efforts that's going to be put in by the government in terms of rebuilding Nepal, in terms of larger infrastructure. Schools and shelters are the sectors which has been allocated for private initiatives. We've already talked about the immediate relief work that our group carried out, converting all our schools into relief camps, distribution of immediately needed material. But most important and the biggest challenge in hand is to ensure that these children go back to school and these people are provided with homes. And that's what we're working on. I want to once again place on record our sincere gratitude for this opportunity that you've given Tara and Kate in terms of sharing what we are doing. Nepal, can you show the school rehabilitation projects already underway, and our group is going to fund 100 schools, which is going to be put back to order. The transitional shelter homes are already under implementation. That's a prototype you saw. We've been able to do a huge amount of value engineering. We are ourselves into infrastructure, we are into real estate. So we've, with the help of some of the experts, we've been able to put together a home which can be built in 7 days with the use of the local material. Sometimes the debris out of the homes which were collapsed or damaged. We're going to train the local community to participate with us. Otherwise, how do you get the people? And then the cost that we've been able to bring down is to the extent of $700 a piece. One of this house, which is about 200 square feet with a separate toilet outside, is going to house 5 people. And these are made of all light material, bamboos, the local mud, clay, and GI seat, very light GI seat, galvanized roofing seat. So it can be easily transported. And many of these materials are going to be locally available. I'm happy to say that as I talk now, already work had started in 4 districts out of 7, to build these, and we are going to deliver the first 100 homes next week. But that's just a tip of an iceberg. What this has done is brought the whole Nepal and the international community together. And that's what I feel so happy and overwhelmed about. First time India and China agreed to join forces in the relief operation, rescue operations. Nepal is going to host on 25th of June a Nepal Rebuild huge state-sponsored, state-organized event where prime ministers of not only the prime ministers of India and China have been invited, but also leading friends and institutions, both bilateral and multilaterals, who have been contributing to the Nepal's development processes, have been invited to come to Nepal, including private sector, including the foundations. We hope to, I think the country has come together even politically. You know that Nepal's history of the political events is somewhat been pretty painful, if I so to speak. We've seen 22 governments in the last 24 years. It has left Nepal a country which has not been able to put together a highly efficient and highly sort of well-organized state body to govern, to the state body to build, at least I shouldn't say govern, but at least to get into fast-track development initiatives. But to our surprise and to our good news, all the political parties have come together, leaving their differences. And last week, we reached a historic accord to agree on a new constitution by consensus. I think this, in my opinion, starts the phase for rebuilding of Nepal as a cohesive nation with the help of the international community and take it to the next level. I often share with people that Nepalese by nature are very resilient people. You heard of the recent disaster that we had at the base camp of Everest, right? Okay, in less than 3 months' time, people were going back there. I mean, my own headquarters of building in Kathmandu, which houses 500 of our top executives, including our own offices, had to be evacuated overnight. But all our businesses are back in order. I think people are waiting in the famous trekking routes of Annapurna and Everest region, ready with their tea houses and ready, the Sherpas and the Gorkhas are ready and waiting. I think this is the time when people all over the world need to know that Nepal needs these people to come back. This is the time, and it's absolutely safe. And there is some kind of a apprehension in the minds of the people, and that's what we need to clear. I spoke to the Bloomberg this morning. We live there. I live there. My entire family lives there. Even the non-resident members of my family who otherwise have homes in India or in Dubai or in Singapore, they've come back there. You saw many of them distributing relief material, because we believe that this is the time all of us needs to be there, needs to associate with the local community, needs to work with the local community as well as with the international community to take Nepal to the next phase. I was told by the Honorable Consul General that Nepal has just announced yesterday that we need $7 billion to rebuild what has been damaged. Okay? In my view, we need $50 billion. Sure. Not only to rebuild what we have, but to take Nepal to the new level with a completely different approach, with a completely different vision. We've seen, provinces like Kunming built. I was sharing this informally with Tara and Keith that 10 years I've been going there. We've built some resorts there. I've been seeing that place has transformed. I just came back from there. Dubai, there is nothing, there is no natural, but look what they've done. So if there is a will and there is a support and if we begin to work as a cohesive nation, not only we can put together the lost 500,000 homes and 12,000 classrooms, but we can really reposition Nepal to a new level. So thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity to share these thoughts. And I always wanted to make this more interactive and more, communicative. So I'd like to, with these words, perhaps, invite your questions, anything you feel like asking to me or to the Consul General who is here, or to our host, please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary. We'll open up the floor to questions here in a moment, both for Mr. Chaudhary and for the Consul General. Why don't I ask a first question, because often people need a moment to think of what they want to ask. I noticed that you're making the transitional shelters out of lightweight materials, bamboo and so forth, and there have been a lot of reports that a lot of the deaths were caused when brick structures collapsed. Is there a real alternative to rebuilding with brick in a lot of these communities? The lightweight materials, I guess, would be good for protecting against rain, but maybe they're not warm enough in winter. What is the guidance that you and maybe the Nepalese government are giving as well on whether it's best to rebuild with brick or maybe try to encourage other materials?
But I think the government, different line ministries, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Housing, they're working on different kind of a prototype. And also the private sector and the different interested parties who have experience as well as technical capabilities. My view is, that we need to use local material as much as possible. There is no alternative to that. And we need to train. This is a time when we need to train the local community to build minimum what they need to build. The scale is so big. I mean, how many people you can bring back to the, from the construction sites? Those construction sites has to go back to business anyway. So it's not about bricks. You can even do local type of bricks, which, many of these, if you go to our village homes, these are not totally big bricks, but there are, and you can do even prefab structures. So there are lots of ideas I'm sure we will find solution that suits every place. And there is no general rule. There are different locations which may be able to offer different solutions.
Thank you. With that, do I have any questions here from the audience? With your extra 2 minutes there, here we go. First one. For Robert, just a moment.
Hi, thank you. Robert Greaves from Hamilton Advisors. I want to follow on Keith's question for a minute. It's my understanding, sir, that there were adequate guidelines in place for earthquake construction on the books in Kathmandu and other places, but in many instances, money changes hands and the guidelines have not been followed, particularly in recent years where there's been an influx of people into Kathmandu and the surrounding valley. And I wonder my question is, is it better enforcement, or how are you going to ensure that the guidelines are followed in future? Thank you.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, although, there was always a feeling that every 80 years there is going to be a big earthquake. We had one 80 years ago. But somehow, as you mentioned, we had an unprecedented influx of people post the Maoist insurgency. And everybody felt that they're safer in Kathmandu Valley. And with the change of the governments that I talked about, not only change of the government, change the swing of the political system from a monarchy to a federal republic, that left the gaps and vacuums everywhere to enforce. Enforcement is a huge issue, including the building codes. But I think now the lesson learned, people realize thousands of such constructions which are illegal or which are unsafe are being demolished. People are moving forward in that direction on their own, and if some try to resist, the state has come forward to do it at their cost. So I'm convinced that this is probably the biggest nightmare that the Nepalese people have seen, and nobody is going to venture out just because they can find the easy solution which doesn't last.
Just to add questions. Basically, the two types of buildings have been destroyed by the quake. The old buildings, which were built maybe 100 years or 50, 70 years back, made of a brick mortar and not the cement used, no RCC buildings. Those buildings collapsed. Second type of buildings which destroyed, they did not follow the exact building code and then standard to be followed. So they built the house in 7-8 story with no space behind, not followed the basic norms developed by the government. So at the moment, government already decided to make mandatory approval of the all buildings to be constructed. So the people who wanted to build a house go to the local municipality or village development committee, we call local government, and get the approval from the local government following the technology, earthquake resist technology. So you are quite right. In the past, we did not follow the standards, as well as the monitoring and the overview over what you call it. The monitoring part was quite weak in the past. So this is the basic cause for most of the buildings collapse in Kathmandu and within Kathmandu Valley. Thank you.
Sarah Monk's a member of this club. Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary, for your presentation. I wondered if you could elaborate a little more on your vision for the future Nepal that might arise out of this terrible tragedy. In particular, could it integrate more into the global economy, which is perhaps more the route that Bangladesh is taking, or could it remain more like Bhutan, a magnificent, somewhat isolated place which has restrictions on what can happen there, how it integrates with the global economy? Would be very interested in your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to talk about that anyway, because I guess that's very important. Okay, what we are dealing with are the immediate issues, but it doesn't change the trend that Nepal has done a pretty good work in terms of integrating itself with the international community when it comes to economic opportunities. Just for your information, we get about $6 billion annually, and which is growing at 20% every year because of the hard works of friends who are sitting here all over the world. This money can potentially, if channelized into larger infrastructure projects like power. Nepal has the potential to generate 150,000 megawatts. You know, these numbers keep swinging. 150,000 megawatts of power just within Nepal, which makes Nepal a country with the highest potential to generate power. And the market is next door. We share 1,800 kilometers of border across the paddy fields in India, across cities, across towns, across streets. Unfortunately, you know, like many countries in South Asia, unfortunately, you know, India was not able to sort of work with the other larger economies to help these South Asian neighbors to deal with these God-given natural opportunities. I was sharing with Keith that, you know, it's not possible for India alone to come forward and put together a 50,000 megawatts series of power plants. They can do 5,000. It's not Bhutan, it's much bigger. The scale is much bigger. But today, the times have changed. I see China and India. China brings in the huge capital at cheap cost and capacity to build these plants, and India has the market. The level of mistrust, which is slowly sort of evaporating among these countries, is going to become crucial to integrate Nepal's economy with the world. And I can see that happening. Tourism, for instance. Okay, tourism, I mean, in everybody's mind, Nepal's tourism is big. Okay, there is no destination like Nepal for trekking when it comes to in particular. Okay, I see private planes parked in the Nepal airport, bringing in top who is who of the world incognito. Okay. Over the years, despite the Maoist insurgencies, we've not seen any kind of a major issues in terms of law and order, in terms of safety or security of the foreigners. Okay, but that's still only 8% of our GDP. Nepal is the home for natural herbs, okay, medicinal herbs, which directly or indirectly goes out without being processed, without much of value addition, okay, through the porous borders. I mean, the opportunity that Nepal offers, be it in the value-added agro industry or in power sector or even infrastructure. I'm just coming from the China, South Asia think tank meeting in Kunming. The maritime Silk Route and the Silk Route revival concept, which is very seriously being pursued, and with the formation of the new infrastructure bank that is taking place in this region has the potentials of integrating economies by Nepal, although that route doesn't go through Nepal, but not too distant, not too far. Okay? It has potentials of bringing up the best out of this country, which has been subdued over the last 70 years. It's not about political systems. It's not about, the political parties. It's all about the will to do something. And I think even sometimes a crisis works to push that. I don't personally believe that Japan would have been Japan today, what Japan is, if Hiroshima and Nagasaki did not happen. I believe that the timing is right. The regional politics, geopolitics is moving in the right direction. Okay? We have a tremendous participation of international community and more importantly India and China in our development initiatives. Nepal has been bestowed with some of the most valuable natural resources, okay, which can just take off to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe over here and then over here, please. Please introduce yourselves.
Mr. Chaudhary, I'm very privileged and honored to meet you just earlier as being a Nepalese countryman. My question is not particularly about this earthquake. Overall, we all being Nepalese are very frustrated and depressions kind of about what's in Nepal. Not only the earthquake, a decade the country has suffered with the rebel fightings, political situation and things. I'm 37. I always wish to go back Nepal and do something. But this earthquake has been pushed me back another maybe 10 years. By that time I'm 47. So that's one thing. And what's the earthquake? The international community without support, Nepal won't be, in this situation. There is still bad situations. But how long the Nepalese keep going to getting this kind of support from the world, right? And I do not believe only the Nepalese or the government can build the world, Nepal again. What you're dreaming, we all dreaming about the new Nepal. The international community also have to be involved, and today's world is economic. So how are you going to invite the international community? Can government give them a secure investment? If you go Philippines, China, everywhere there's economic zone. Where is in Nepal? How long the Nepalese keep going to work in Qatar, the middle labor supply, right? So is the Nepal bureaucrats? I feel very frustrated with the way that bureaucrats work. So what can you message you can give the non-resident Nepalese, the youth people like me, and how can you motivate them to go back and build up the Nepals? Thank you very much.
You're absolutely right, and I see that this is a problem which most of us have been going through psychologically. But same time, I also feel that many of those who've been instrumental in changing this psyche use this as a defense. Okay? We've been marred by the Maoist insurgency for 15 years. Don't talk about development to me. First, let's deal with the Maoist situation. Then what followed was the constitution writing. Last 8 years, that was the only issue which was driving the whole psyche of the country. I'm talking about more, you took the name of the state machineries or parties or organs which are closely working there. I believe, like you, that it has nothing to do with these issues. The development processes, setting out the national priorities in terms of lifting the economy of a country and dealing with the political issues can always go hand in glove together. We've seen that happening in many of the countries. Sri Lanka built its economy in the times of insurgency. I can give several other examples. So, my dear friend, we need to wake up first. These people are elected by us. You need to come and contest election. Politics should not be the job of the people who have no other business to do. Politics should become an initiative of those who want to work to the national building processes. Politics should not be an abuse. It should become a strong instrument to change the face of a country. And I think it can be done. This situation is creating that level of awareness and that pain and that agony in the minds of the people. And it's time. I think you should spread this message. Ask this question in Facebook, Twitter, and all the social media that you can think about. Spread this message amongst the more than 5 million Nepalese who are worldwide. who are sweating it out in Qatar and in Saudi Arabia for earning less than $200 a month, and sending that money to Nepal to feed the national coffer, which is not able to use the development process, use the resources for building of the country. Our less than 30% of our national development budget is spent, whereas 120% of our general administrative budget is spent. So this is the time to fix the governance apart from the infrastructure. My position is same like yours. Okay, we all have to. We have no choice. We have to work to change, and this has happened. The world has shown many examples.
Over here, please. Please introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm John Snellgrove from the Vine Church here in Hong Kong. And Mr. Chaudhary, thank you very, very much for coming today and sharing with us. And can I just say that really the people here really we're in sorrow with you when we heard about this, and we're with you in the support. So you've got some support from all around the place. But when we have a natural disaster, there's always the predators come in. And we're hearing some horrific stories from Nepal. I'd like to get your comments on this, of the way that people have come in and have used this disaster to bring about trafficking, in particular the whole area of sexual trafficking. Obviously, what we've been looking at today is the reconstruction of buildings, and that's quite right. But trafficking of people and particular sexual predators, really has a way of destroying society. I wonder if you could just comment on what can be done or what is being done in this area.
It's all about bringing in a well-balanced economic development. Some of the areas which is known in Nepal for women trafficking are considered to be the areas where historically the families have survived either by sending out the males to work for British and Indian Army. If there are women in the family, sending them out. It's not always, I'm talking about the history. Okay? It's job, like any other job. It's creating job, it's like keeping the economy going. But the level of awareness is changing, and there has to be a creation. We can philosophically talk about many of the nice things, but at the end of the day, are we able to provide an alternate means of living? Are we able to educate them enough? I think we have to find the answer to that. The moment, there are places in Nepal, or there are many other countries. I don't want to paint a very sorry picture only about Nepal. There are many in South Asia as well as others, where people have to survive on less than $1 a day. And there are also people who can afford a $200,000 worth of a car, which is flying in the streets of Kathmandu and Viratnagar and Pokhara. So it's all about uneven distribution of the resources, and that's the single biggest. Of course, there are some agencies, and I was telling Tara, because I believe there is some event which is going to focus that she's organizing. There are some organizations who've done a beautiful job, like the Mighty Nepal. They've been also recognized by CNN. There are many other organizations which are consciously working to change, rehabilitate, bring them back, try and offer alternate. But I'm convinced that if we are to see a large-scale change in this approach, it will have to be economic development. The focus has to shift from politics to economic development. Economic development agenda has to come to the center stage.
But to follow up on that, I think some of the concerns about trafficking are not necessarily voluntary prostitution or whatever it might be, but involuntarily people being duped, abducted, or otherwise forcibly removed and put into doing things that they really don't want to be doing. Has that been a problem since the earthquake in Nepal?
I'm not aware of that in particular. I don't think so. And honestly speaking, our minds are too busy thinking of all these, than to worry what's exactly happening out there. I don't think it has changed either way much, because today the whole energies of the country is focused towards dealing with the immediate issues, which is on the table. Would you like to add anything on that?
Yes.
No, I think particularly with this question, there are few pockets in Nepal, the few category of the society where from the girls, forced to go to cities or maybe go to India for prostitution. So the government and the social organizations are actively involved, as I mentioned, Mighty Nepal and quite a few others, to to motivate the people not to go for such activities. The important thing again is the education, and mostly if we could provide a kind of a technical education or maybe skillful kind of education, then I think if they got the opportunity to work in the country, they won't go for such activity. But this is not a recent phenomenon, not any impact with the earthquake. It's a long time being rooted in the society, in particular remote districts. So the efforts are going on, but it's a kind of nobody can stop it unless until we provide education to the people and provide opportunity for employment. That is only the way that we can stop it. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more. Actually, maybe if each of you can pose a question quickly, and then maybe our guest can respond to both of them as one quick answer. We've got 2 minutes left. Please go ahead first, and then you next.
Okay. Just very quickly, I'm wondering if you can this room is obviously filled with people that have a love of Nepal or are here for a humanitarian basis. What can we do to help? So if we worked with Chaudhary Foundation, what would happen? And what would be the first steps for us to help in this immediate stage?
And over here, please.
As it happens, it's a little bit related. Annette Johnson here, member of the club. Just wanted to see if you can give a quick view on how you feel that the help that has come from the international community in the wake of the earthquake, how have you been able to translate it into material work, things that are needed in Nepal? Those of us who are just contributing money from here, there's been all these issues with disasters in the past. How is your feeling that it has worked in Nepal so far?
Well, I must admit that, I like yourselves, I too hear that a lot of efforts are going around all over the world to raise money, to assist Nepal. There is a tremendous desire to help Nepal amongst the people. And I can't necessarily say that all of it's being put to good use or it's going where it's meant to, for two reasons. A, there are always different elements in any environment, any society, and B, you need really a platform which is capable, a platform which is transparent, which is capable of handling this and making sure that it is put to use effectively, efficiently, and as cost effectively as possible. That's one of the reasons why we brought in, when we found that whatever efforts we are making is not going to be enough. And when people like Jack Ma, we know the family well, and they said we want to come and help, and he wanted to build 1,000 homes. We created a platform with a transparent system like Price Waterhouse India Foundation laying down all the processes in place. Seeds, another not-for-profit organization, building these homes and creating in the process a platform which they can use without any cost, which belongs to the CG Foundation, to provide them with the platform to go and contribute in a manner they want. So I'm sure there are many others, and I'm sure we need to make people aware that it has to be done through a proper medium. Does that answer your question?
Okay, and just briefly, I guess you're providing on the screen 2 institutions that are seeking to do relief work for people who are looking for organizations to contact. And just to follow up on Nanette's question, the second question, among the international organizations, is there any in particular that you've seen that you regard as having done a particularly efficient or effective job in Nepal? I remember, for example, when I was in Tacloban after Typhoon Haiyan, I was impressed with the Red Cross and Save the Children, for example. Are there any particular global organizations that you regard as having been particularly effective? Oh, I should add, Médecins Sans Frontières was also very effective after Typhoon Haiyan. What would you mention among international organizations in Nepal?
You mean which international organizations?
Which have been most effective or efficient in bringing help to Nepal?
Well, I do hear and initiatives which are generally always been in action from organizations like the Red Cross and Save the Children and some of these names which are traditional names which are very active. But if I was to look for an organization which did a tremendous job in terms of the immediate relief work in the first place.
Yes.
Okay. But if someone has really got down to the task of rebuilding these homes and schools, unfortunately, I'm not aware.
Okay.
Let me. Basically, there are two ways of supporting, to Nepal. Number one, the government to government. That also includes the United Nations system. In Nepal, UN is the one of the largest donor. Various agencies within the UN support us. Not now, but from the past. So this time also, United Nations is also coordinating among the various UN agencies and international organizations. Particularly, the UNESCO can work for the children. For the cultural and monumental, the heritages. They are ready to support us to rebuild those devastated, the buildings, palaces, temples, and religious places. The UNICEF is working with the children. They are ready to help the children and students, in rebuilding the school buildings. And government has called for the 25, as he mentioned, Mr. Chaudhary mentioned, 25th of June is the International Aid Conference in Kathmandu. I hope most of the institutions, most of the governments are participating in that particular event, and they make the commitment later on. The second part is the non-governmental sector, the charity, foundations, INGOs, they are contributing quite a lot. And we have the non-Nepalese resident association, which is split in more than 60 countries. They are also collecting resources to rebuild Nepal. So this is the process, the various agencies, including government, work together to rebuild the country. So this is a bit early, but after 25th of June, when the government will come up with the strategy, plan and policy to support Nepal, then we'll sit together again. Again, Mr. Chaudhary's foundation can take that message to the people who can contribute, and particularly from Hong Kong, you have the very good culture of charity. We have received till today about 10 million of US dollar, and we transferred the money to the Prime Minister Disaster Relief Fund in Nepal. And still, many charity organizations are interested. They come to us to support. But what I think is that we may have in future a kind of mega event in Hong Kong, so that we can invite all the concerned foundations, charity institutions, governments together, and can call for the support to Nepal to rebuild and raise Nepal again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary and the Consul General, Mr. Dahal. We appreciate very much your coming today. We like to always give our speakers something to remember the club by, so the club tie. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
We hope to see you next Tuesday of next week for the Vice Chairman of General Electric. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Just one moment. We have a memento, small memento for F.C.C.